Welcome to Tanakh Talk. I'm your host, William Hall, broadcasting live from Kingsland, Texas, USA, with another episode of Controversial Issues with Rabbi Chaim Coffman from the Holy Land. Welcome back, Rabbi. How are you today, sir?
Always a pleasure. Very good. I wanted everyone should know I didn't blow up your system last week, so it had nothing to do with me.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It was totally Tovia. It's a new name of a show, Totally Tovia. All right. And then,
totally taboo. Do not touch my system.
Yipper. Very good. Very good. Well, again, welcome back. Thank you all for tuning in. Make sure we're live there, and it looks like we are. Very good. I'm going to put a post up on Facebook, too. It's been a jam-packed. The new schedule has got all the shows so close back to back. It's sometimes it's difficult getting the information out there that I need to before the show, so I kind of do it when we get started. So,
what about bathroom breaks? You need a bathroom break also, right?
Those happen in between shows. So we usually.
That's why he just let me go, and I don't even know if I'm talking to anybody.
So far, so
anybody
good.
Out there? Anybody?
Hey, so far so good. You've been doing good, so that's good. All right. Yep. So, and then after this show, we've got 2 more, I think, something like that. Yeah, 2 more shows right after this one. Yours ends at 12:30. The next one starts at 12:45 to 1:45, and then 2:30 to 3:30. So. Wow,
you're closer than mine, because then I have a class at 2:30 your time, and then a class at 4 o'clock your time. So,
Goodness.
So we're almost doing the same.
Right, I hear you. All right, well, good deal. Well, so we've talked about. I wouldn't say cross-dressing. That's not exactly what we're talking about today. It's kind of in the category, but not really. I mean, when you think cross-dresser, you think in a guy who's putting on makeup on a dress, making it obvious that he's trying to look like a woman. But the topic for today would be more directed towards in business. Women who wear business suits, and realistically, they're designed very similar to men's clothing, etc. I mean, we're talking about where it's like in the gray area, and so that's what the question is for today. So, can women dress in men's clothing in under any circumstances, even with different styles that might try to tweak it to make them look feminine, but they're still fully suited, that sort of thing. So that's where we're at.
All right, good topic.
Okay.
We're going to see it, I think, on both sides, but you want to hit the woman aspect, so we'll hit that. Definitely hit that. There's also a question, let's say, there are unisex brands that, let's say neither for men or women, right? But there's also a problem. Let's say you had pants specifically for women, right? The problem is, obviously, you see the split between the legs and the way, it's nice and snug, so certainly not modest that way as well. But on the other hand, you could have men doing things that women do, in general, which would come under this prohibition also. Let's say looking in a mirror, right? That would come underneath this category. If a guy looks in the mirror, we'll just throw this out there, just a way of introduction, and he makes sure that it doesn't look like, in my language, a schlep. His hair's not all over the place, and he looks relatively groomed when he goes out, so that's okay. But if he's sitting there looking at himself and, looking and whatever, like a woman would do, that would be forbidden. So we're going to hit all that. The Torah here, Deuteronomy, the source is Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 5. And the Torah says, a male garb shall not be on a woman, and a man shall not wear a woman's garments. For anyone who does so is an abomination of Hashem. Now, it's an interesting thing. It's bad enough if you do it, right? We can understand, I guess, a guy wearing women's clothing makes more sense, or maybe, let's say, earrings or jewelry. We'll speak about that as well. But women might be a little more, the English would say maybe a little bit more dicey. She wears a nice, shirt. That's for men. She's allowed to do that, right? Or slacks or whatever, right? Or, pants in general. So, but the interesting thing also is going to be what the end of the verse says. Now, the end of the verse says it's an abomination. That it not only shouldn't it be done, it's abomination. Now, we never say a person's abomination. We say the act or what they do is an abomination. What's the obvious case? Book of Leviticus chapter 18, right? Chapter 18, I think 22 or 21. That'll be the source for homosexuality. right? Chapter 18. Let me just see there because people say I never quote anything. Yeah, chapter 18. Chapter 18, 22. Should not lie with a man as one lies with a woman. It's an abomination. Do not lie with any animal, verse 23. Chapter 18, book of Leviticus, chapter 20, verse 23. Do not lie with any animal contaminated with it. A woman should not stand before an animal for mating. It is a perversion. Doesn't say it's an abomination. It says it's a perversion. Right? So you see, there are certain things that are called an abomination. Now, a woman wearing man's clothes and vice versa, most people probably would not have thought, it's called an abomination. They could say it's strange. Maybe they would say it's a perversion, right? But not necessarily saying that's an abomination. So we're going to have to see, we're going to go through the verse, we're going to go through the verse itself and really, take it soup to nuts, exactly, what's going on. But do want to mention that the Sefer HaChinuch was a great work that went through every Torah portion of the week and brought down each mitzvah according to the parsha. So he brings down over there what's the purpose of the mitzvah. The purpose of the mitzvah over here is the separation between the sexes. Because if each one was wearing each other's clothing, there wouldn't be any difference, right? Maybe there wouldn't be any difference, or they would become intermingled and would fall into licentiousness. Now, this is an interesting thing. Why? Because we want to make sure there is a difference, right? Since there's a physiological difference between men and women, that's not really the topic for now, right? Because we've spoken about it before. There's also a spiritual difference. Now, if women, are built differently, it could be they also have a different mentality. Men do not think the same way as women do, and vice versa. That was a question I got earlier, about that. Why in the Torah don't they think the same? Well, they shouldn't necessarily think the same. Women will just throw this out there. They want to get to the practical halacha. They want to know what I have to do. Is it permitted? Is it forbidden? Doesn't mean women can't be analytical. Men will go through this whole thing. Well, it says like this. Rashi says like that. The Rosh, this, that, back and forth. Right? And they say, well, what do I do? In the end, what do I do? Women want to get to brass tacks. They want to know what to do. Now, are there women out there that are analytical? 100%. Can they be more analytical than men? Also, right? They could. But, in general, women, do think a certain way. I'm not saying they can't change. Right? I can't say a man can't change and think the other way also. Right? But they're different. Bottom line is they're different over here. Now, the question is, we're going to run into an issue over here. It says that a male garb should not be on a woman, and a man should not wear a feminine garment. Now, the obvious question is, what does that mean? What constitutes really men and women's clothing today? You could tell me it goes on societal norms, right? In other words, if I lived in Scotland today, it would be permitted for a man to wear a kilt. Men wear kilts, right? Could be, for, if an Orthodox Jew would see you wearing a kilt, even in Scotland, maybe not a good thing to do. Even if people do it, right, may be forbidden for other reasons. But technically, if a guy lived in Scotland, an Orthodox Jew lived in Scotland, he'd be able to wear a kilt, right? But not anywhere else. Why? Because no one wears kilts anywhere else, right? Earrings may be another example, and that we'll speak about as well. Years ago, before they became popular with men didn't wear it. What about rings? Right? Talking about way back when, men wore rings. Men today don't wear rings, right? In Orthodox circles, maybe in more, modern Orthodox circles, you can have a double ring ceremony, at the wedding, right? He gives her a ring, she gives him a ring, under the canopy, under the chuppah, etc. But it's not the norm. Right? It's definitely not the norm. So therefore, a man not going to wear, wouldn't necessarily wear a ring today. Wouldn't necessarily wear an earring, even though today you tell me it's popular with men. Right? And when I was growing up way back when. So it's someone in my high school class, one of the first people I saw, had an earring. So what does that mean if you wore an earring way back when? You were gay. That's what it sounded like. right? Because not too many people wore earrings, right? But, it obviously caught on. You see a lot of men, wearing earrings today. So, it's been more accepted, right? If it's been more accepted, maybe we'll say it's okay, right? Maybe 100% we'll say it's okay. For that reason, even though, you're not gonna see that. You won't see, Orthodox men today wearing, earrings, even though technically you could say, well, if a lot of people do it, so why shouldn't we do it? Right? Why shouldn't it be an issue? There's another issue. The other issue is we don't go in the ways of non-Jews, right? So even if the secular world, that's what they do and things have changed, right? It doesn't mean necessarily we have changed, even though that may be the case. So there's also a question, I guess we'll get back to unisex clothing, right? We'll get to as well, right? It could be, that might be okay, except with certain colors maybe, but again, if it's undermining modest behavior, that would be an issue, because we want to show, and I don't think there's what to talk about over here. We want to show beyond the shadow of a doubt, men and women are different. I remember, great rabbi gets up to speak to a bunch of feminists, right? And he says, okay, he's going to talk about feminism and Judaism, how Judaism deals with women. Obviously not the topic, but I'll just throw it out there because it's a funny story. And that is, he says, okay, is there any difference between men and women? Any difference? So these big-time feminists say, no. He goes, okay, well, let me ask the question again. Any differences? Anything you can think of? Women can give birth. That's a difference, right? But these feminists want to say no, right? There's absolutely no difference. That's the problem. That's the problem where you straddle sort of both lines, which we mentioned before. As the Sefer HaChinuch says, you're going to become intermingled and fall into licentiousness. That would be, that would be an issue, right? So now, even if you add, let's say pants that were especially made for women, right? So now what would be the issue? Technically, it's made for women. It should be okay. Problem is, though, they are normally snug fitting, meaning they're modest, right? You can see the split between the legs. They're in modest, so that should be forbidden, right? And this would come into other categories also. Can a man dye his hair? Women dye their hair, right? He wants to get rid of that gray. He wants to get rid of this gray, right? But he can't do it. Why? It's what women do. They dye their hair, unless it be a local custom for men to do such a thing, right? But if, let's say, wearing an item had some functional reason, let's say he's stuck in the pouring rain, and the only thing he has is a woman's raincoat, that could be okay, right? That's not necessarily wearing a woman's clothing for the sake of wearing a woman's clothing, right? He may not have a choice over here, but okay, that's what we'll say in general. So the Torah here tells me we're gonna go now, and explain the verse and see what the differences are. Get a little bit nitty gritty here, but I think that it's going to explain well. It's going to explain well what's going on over here. So what does the Torah tell me? Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 5. It says, no man's item should be no man's item on a woman. Man should not wear a woman's garments. I mean, we're translating literally here. For anyone who does so is abhorrent to God. Right? It's an abomination. Now, what's the prohibition? Simple prohibition is do not wear things that women wear, and women should not wear things that men wear, and men shouldn't do things women do. Right? Which we're gonna get to. Right? But there's one problem. One problem, which is a major problem in the Torah itself, and that's why we always say you need oral law. That's why the Karaites hate us. But nonetheless, this verse doesn't tell me anything. All this verse tells me is a man can't wear women, no item of a man should be on a woman, and a woman should not wear a man's garment. What's the problem with this verse? It's ambiguous. Extremely ambiguous over here. It doesn't tell me what the clothing is. It doesn't tell me what it means a man's item on a woman. It doesn't tell me anything. Right? We do understand in the vernacular, what does it mean? It means that a woman can't wear male clothing and a man can't wear woman's clothing. Very good. Any definitions? No definitions. Right? We have zero definition over here. So now we're going to break it down. Now we're going to break it down a little bit. And see what the words are exactly used in Hebrew and what it means. Right? We're going to go back to the, contemporary translation, other translations, Right? So the first thing it says, Torah says, is lo yeh kli gever. It's so kli literally means a vessel. That's what it means. Right? You're not going to have a vessel of a man, literally, on a woman. They translate it here, there will be no man's item on a woman. But a kli in general, here they translate it as an item. Right? The reality is it means like a vessel. But they translate it here as an item. And then it says, V'lo yilbash gever simlas isha. Meaning, a man shall not wear. Lo yilbash means you will. Gever means a man will not wear. Simlat isha. What is a simla? Right. So the question is, a simla means a garment. Right. Translated over here means a garment. Now the question is, does this male apparel, right, this kli gever, or this kli, is it equivalent to simla? Right? Is it the same thing as a garment? Right? You'll say, what's the difference? Right? Who cares? Maybe an item's the same thing. You could have said there'll be no man's garment on a woman, and a man should not wear a woman's garment. Right? Same thing. Problem is, two different words are used. Now, when two different words are used, you can't say, well, it's the same thing. It means the same thing. Right? So you have to see exactly what they mean. So the question is, are they the same thing? Or does it refer to something else? Now, what is a simla in general? Today we translate it like as a skirt, I guess. We would translate it. But really, a simla is a cloth. It's a piece of cloth. What is it used for? Uses to cover, right? It can cover a person. It could cover an inanimate object. Let's say like a bed or something like that. We look at Genesis chapter 9, verse 23 speaks about it. Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 17. Right? A simla means some sort of piece of cloth. It can also mean clothing in the plural, including men's clothing. Genesis chapter 37, verse 34. Right? Exodus chapter 19, verse 10. Right? There are a bunch of references over here. Now, what's the word that's used at the beginning? It says lo yilbash. Right? The second part it says lo yilbash by a woman. It means to wear. Right? The root of the word lamed bet shin means to wear. Right? Common in modern Hebrew, that's what it means. It means to wear, to put on. And the word simla, what does it refer to? I mentioned it refers to, it could be a skirt, right? But also refers to a cloak. That's a good word. A cloak, a wrap, right? Some sort of like a wrap or a mantle, or something like that. Or something, right? Basically a garment that a woman wears, right? So the end of the verse, pretty easy to understand. A woman not allowed to wear a man's not allowed to wear a woman's clothing, right? Something she wraps herself in, something that she wears. Okay, but what about the first part of the verse? First part of the verse where we say kli gever, right? This apparel or this item, as we translated it, that's not the same thing as wearing, a cloak or a garment. Doesn't seem like it's the same thing. There could be any number of interpretations over here, or meaning of the words, right? It could mean type of container, right? That's what a kli generally means. It's a vessel, some type of container. It could be baggage. It could be tools, right? It could be defined as a tool, as a weapon, as armor, other household objects, jewelry, ornamental objects, and general things. Right? So we have a varied amount over here of different definitions of what this word kli means. Right? It can mean a number of different things. Now, if we look at rabbinic literature, for instance, there are interesting interpretations. Now again, the Karaites are going to hate this, but too bad, because we don't have any other way of trying to understand what this means. Right? Some say it means that it's male ritual clothing. Right? A kli. What does that mean? Something that a male in general would wear. I.e., tefillin. Or what we would call phylacteries, for lack of a better word. or tzitzis, right? Fringes. Now the question is, can women wear these things, right? That was already debated way back when. And if we're going to take a strict stance over here, then over here we got a problem, right? Certainly for women because it's a male garment, right? Tefillin, tzitzis are male garments today. If they're male garments, it would be forbidden. I heard someone once say, technically, if a woman wore a tallis, right? Let's say she wore tzitzis, and she put a pink string or something, make it more feminine, maybe it wouldn't be a male garment anymore, right? But anyway, today is not the custom, right? It's considered like a male garment. Anyway, right? That would be one issue. Also, there's a prohibition. We mentioned before, what can a kli be? A kli can be defined as a weapon, as armor, so to speak. So going to war, a kli is often used. What is it often used as? Armor, right? As we've seen, right? We've seen in a number of places, right? That's to be the case. As it says in Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 41, Judges 18, verse 11, 1 Samuel 8, verse 12. I mean, a lot of places, right? That's what it would seem. That's what it would seem to me, right? It's a weapon. It's used as like bearing a weapon. And therefore, what's it termed with? What word is normally used? The word that's normally used is gever, which again, gever is really literally going to be mean. Is really literally going to mean a man over here, right? But it makes a distinction between men and women. Also, traditional weapons were used by men. So therefore, by women, there'd be a whole question if a woman will be allowed to carry a gun, right? Even for protection. Why? Because it's a male weapon. So the whole question, Yael kills Sisera, right? As it says in Tanakh, what did she kill him with? She got him drunk, right? She got him sleepy and whatever, other things that went on. And how did she kill him? She took a tent peg. All right, I think she took a tent peg and killed him. Killed him with a tent peg. So the obvious question was, why don't you just kill him with a sword, with a knife, or something like that, right? Because she understood exactly this thing, that traditional weapons were viewed as strictly as the domain of men and not women. So that's why she did it. There is a whole question, maybe we'll get to it another time, whether women would be allowed, to have a gun over here, even for protection. Why? Because it's a male garment. Be considered a male, male type of thing. Nonetheless, trying to understand what this verse says, we don't have, that much to work with. Now, when we look at the word kli, right, it can mean also in the plural, it can mean garments, it can mean vessels, tools, weapons, right? All kinds of things we mentioned. So if it's to be understood as a garment, and similar to the word simla, which we mentioned is a garment, why did they use the verb lavash? The word lavash means to wear, right? So instead of saying kli gever, why don't they say, lo yeh lavash gever, or something like that, right? In other words, why not use the same language? Same language would make more sense, right? So there's a much broader phrasing, right, over here, right, in the first part of the prohibition. So therefore, it's going to be it has to be a different definition. In other words, kli gever, that says a man can't wear women's clothing, so to speak, is not the same as a woman wearing a man's clothing. Not exactly the same. Why? Because the terminology is different. Because if the terminology would be the same, I would agree. If the terminology is the same, then it means the same. If it's not the same, there's a difference. Right? So now there's another question. Right? As we get into all these questions here. Right? What did the Torah tell me? It says, V'lo yeh kli gever al isha, be no man's item on a woman. Kli gever, right? Gever is used. Then it says, lo yilbash gever. Then it says a man should not wear a woman's garment. He uses the word gever twice. Right? Which is a little bit strange. Right? Why would he use it twice? Instead of the word ish. What's the word ish mean? It means man. Right? Now the question is, does it really matter? Does it significantly differentiate what it means over here or not? Because normally the word for man is ish. Man's all over the Torah. Right? Many, many times. Right? It mentions that. Right? So, when you compare men and women, it says ish and isha. Man and a woman. Right? It says Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 13. Right? Now, it's very strange because the only time the term gever, which means man over here, is used over here in Deuteronomy. Right? It's not used anywhere else. Right? What's the terminology used everywhere else? Just about as the word ish. So the question is, what's the difference? What's the difference between a gever, which means a man, and an ish? Right? So the words, what's the root of the word gever? Gimel, beis, resh. What is the word? What does that mean? It means to be strong, gibor, to be strong, to prevail. And guess what? There's no female. There's no female context over here. Gibor Ra. There's no such thing. Right? In modern Hebrew or biblical Hebrew. Right? There's no female counterpart. Right? In biblical Hebrew at all. Ish has a female counterpart. Ish, Isha. Right? Ish means human. Right? It means a person. Right? Just like Adam. Adam means a person. Enosh also means a person. Right? But Gever, what does it mean? Always. 100% will always mean a man. Right? It's never gender neutral. That is, that is the point over here. It means an adult male, someone who's considered manly, so to speak. He's got strength, he's got courage, different things. Now, if that's the case, let's look at another aspect. Is the action being prohibited for each sex or the prohibition for women different than that of men? Question is it the same or it's different? Now, if I have different terminology, then it must be they're two different things. Because if they're going to be the same thing, then why didn't the Torah use the same language? If the Torah used the same language, I could say, very good, then it means the same thing. But not true. I have two different words over here. Right? So it's probably two different things. But again, the first part is ambiguous. The second part is pretty clear. Second part of the verb of the sentence is that a man cannot wear a woman's outer garment. That seems pretty clear. Also, the Talmud says it goes beyond just an outer garment, right? Because by the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? Second part of the prohibition, we expand it also to wear a woman's tunic, some sort of outer garment, in addition to, another type of garment. But in any case, it went further. It went further to extend to jewelry. Any other female adornments, right? Others extended it even further. Grooming behaviors, right? A guy looking in the mirror for an hour. Right? For me, my hair's going to stay the same way. No matter what I do, I go like this, it stays the same. Right? Very easy. I don't have to spend that much time in front of a mirror. Right? But other people may spend a lot of time in front of the mirror. That's what women do. Right? Maybe wearing, a particular hairstyle, plucking out white hair. That's going to be forbidden. Right? That's going to be forbidden for a guy. Why? Because it's what women do. Even if they pluck out white hairs, maybe they dye their hair. And a man's not allowed to do that, right? Because that's what women do. Or maybe, let's say, shaving or cutting hair from different body parts, right? Certain body parts. If that's what women do. Now, that necessarily does not capture the spirit of the prohibition, right? Meaning that men should look like men. They shouldn't look like women or do things to look like women. Now, there is a question, what about if someone's a unibrow? Right? Someone, has hair in the middle that makes it look like they have one eyebrow. Now, there's a question if a guy is dating and he's got a unibrow, doesn't look so nice, right? Doesn't, won't be so easy for this person to get married, so to speak, because, unibrows, I've had a few of them in my life, right? But most people shave it because it doesn't look nice. Question is, are you allowed to do that? Would you be allowed to do that or not? Right now, so I did see brought down by great rabbinical authorities, of today, that they allow it because they're not doing it necessarily just to groom. They're doing it for other reasons, right? They have other reasons to do it. They're not doing it just, this is what women do or whatever, or plucking their eyebrows. They're not doing that. It looks bad. It looks bad. So, according to many rabbinical authorities, they'd be allowed to do that. But again, particular hairstyles, plucking out white hairs, and cutting hair like a woman would do or whatever, right? As well is going to be part of this prohibition, right? All these, what are we talking about? That men should look like men. They should look like women, right? They're extensions of this biblical, of what the Torah says over here. It's an extension, right? Based on what? Based on the terminology. Because the terminology is not used for both. So, the prohibition, according to the Torah, that you have a man wearing a woman's outer garments, and for a woman, same thing, but it goes, it goes beyond that, it goes beyond that as well. And a woman, we're going to throw this out there as well, as we go a little bit further, and that is women should not have any item associated with men, including all weapons, as we mentioned before, maybe certain tools, right? Is any clothing considered manly, right? That's why you have two parts of the prohibition, right? That's why they're not identical. Now, in order to get to that, there's the whole thing. I mean, if you want to get to really what's behind it, which we're going to get to, and then we'll get, a little more practical. The end of the verse, what does the Torah tell me? The Torah here tells me, which doesn't say by very many mitzvahs at all. It says, don't do it. You know why? It's something that's an abomination, right? It's an abomination. It's an abomination to God, to the Lord your God. Now, I can think of a lot of things. And we're going to keep this clean because I want to make sure your ratings stay okay, right? But there are a lot of things I could think, that sound more drastic, like an abomination, right? One of them that jumps out is homosexuality, right? That act, not the person. The act is abomination. It's not a natural inclination. We spoke about this. That was the first one we did on Tanakh Talk, was about homosexuality. But the question is over here, why is it so bad? Why is it so bad? Now, I can say very easy, even before I get to the answer, I can say very easy, look what's going on today. Look what's going on in the world today. Kids at a very young age, are taught why shouldn't they be like the opposite sex? How do you know? They want to marry someone of the opposite sex, and all that. The values have gone ballistic, totally ballistic, right? Boys want to be girls want to be boys. Nobody wants to be like themselves. Right? It's a whole crazy thing. So if you allow this to happen, I would say very simple. This is going to go haywire. Right? It's going to go haywire. Exactly what we see today. Right? So now, interesting. There are other reasons. There are other reasons as well. Now, just because it says it's an abomination, again, what's my problem? I got a lot of problems, but what's one of them? The problem is it's ambiguous. It's ambiguous over here. Torah doesn't tell me anything. It just says, God says it's an abomination. Okay. Now, there are a lot of contexts over here. Some have it related to, let's say, religious practice, right? Worship. Some it's societal, ethical, could be moral, right? Any number of things. In any of these contexts, if you look at them, they don't seem to have that much in common, right? So now the question is, we have to see, what the problem is. So the Gemara tells us, Gemara gives one answer, and the Gemara says, it says it's disgusting, right? But we don't have an example. Torah doesn't give me an example. It just says the man should not put on a woman's outfit and sit among women. Now, women should not put on a man's outfit and sit among men. So comes the wrong Rashi. What does that mean? What does it mean over here? That should be no man's item on a woman, right? So that she looks like a man so she can mingle among men. What would be the purpose of that? Very simple. Either fornication or adultery, right? That's what would come in, right? And why is it disgusting in God's eyes? Because it's going to bring about disgusting behavior, There's going to be a mixture of men and women. And because there's going to be a mixture of men and women, right, there's going to be adultery, there's going to be other things going on. And so therefore, it's forbidden. It's forbidden that. Why? Because then you're going to intermingle. And what's the purpose of intermingling with single sex groups? Obviously, illicit sexual activity. Makes perfect sense. Now, that's why it's only permissible to cross-dress if there's no deception. Right? If there's no such deception, what case would be that on Purim? Right? Even though some will say it's still not a good thing to do even on Purim. Right? Dress up your son as a girl or vice versa. Right? But nonetheless, we're not worried about immorality over here. So here, Rashi states clear, one reason, immorality. Right? It's a clear prohibition of immorality. Comes on the Rambam. The Rambam says, you know why it's forbidden? Brings in the guide for the perplexed. Why is it forbidden? What's it associated with? Idolatry. Right? Idolatry. So he brings down that, he says you find in a certain book, commandments that a man should put on a woman's dyed garment when standing before the planet Venus. And then a woman should put on, some sort of male garment when standing before Mars. Right? Idolatry. Right? Idolatry. So therefore, why did they do it? Why did they wear stuff like this? Again, that's what people did for the sake of idolatry. Also, some people say cross-dressing part of cultic practice in Mesopotamia, right? As well. So, many times there are going to be scholars, rabbinic scholars, that are going to come out, and say the Torah forbids this. Why is it forbidden? Because what's it associated with? Foreign cultic practices, right? Deuteronomy many times, right? Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 29 to 31, chapter 13, verses 13 to 19. A lot of places in the Torah that the Torah is going to say, don't do it. Why? Because that's what the nations do, right? It's one of the reasons certain things are forbidden, because that's what they did in Egypt. Disgusting things that were done are going to be forbidden because of what other nations did. Right? So that's potentially a second reason. Comes along the Ibn Ezra. The Ibn Ezra says that the prohibition is based on the idea either wearing garments or ornaments of the other sex. What would that do? You would think one idea is that God created a separate, and thus dressing like the other sex contradicts God's work. Right? Two totally separate things. Right? Which also wouldn't be good. Right? Certainly wouldn't be good. So you're mixing two things that shouldn't be mixed. Right? That they should be separate. Also like playing with creation. Taking a donkey and mating it with a horse. And what do you get? A mule. Right? Are you allowed to crossbreed? No. Right? Even for a non-Jew might be forbidden. But even so, what's the end result? It makes a mule, tremendously strong animal. What's the problem with the mule? One problem. Sterile. Right? I don't think that's a coincidence. So here you're taking two things that really should be separate. You put them together. Goes against what God wants. Right? Same thing over here. Right? In other words, you're taking two separate things and putting them together. They shouldn't be put together. Right? They shouldn't be put together. Now, if you look at these laws in context, right, if you go back to the beginning of the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 22, seemingly they seem unrelated, right? Verse 1 to 4 talks about respecting the neighbor's property. Then you got verse 5 against cross-dressing. Then you got verses 6 to 7, sparing the mother bird, right? Taking her young from the nest. Then verse 8, putting parapets on homes. Verse 9, not mixing two kinds of seed in the same field. Verse 10, plowing with two different kinds of animals. Wearing clothing combines two different materials, wool and linen. Verse 11, putting tassels on garments. Verse 12, so it's a whole question, what's it doing here? What in the world? Normally we say there's a juxtaposition of verses. But even if there's a juxtaposition of verses, I can learn out one thing from a previous verse, or the verse after. Whatever the case is, what do I see over here? I don't see anything. I don't think necessarily anything in common. But if we see Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 5, our verse, talks about not mixing, not wearing different garments, etc. 9 and 11, what are they concerned with? Mixing two things. Mixing two things that should not be mixed. Right? Boundaries. Distinction between things that people could be mixed, but they should be separate. Should be separate for any number of reasons. Could be to maintain order, stability, could be, any number of reasons. Right? But the reality is there is a connection because there are things that are mixed together should never be mixed. Right? An ox and a donkey, don't plow with them. Right? Wearing clothing combines two different materials, wool and linen. Don't mix two kinds of seeds. Right? Together. So there are a lot of separations. Remember, the world was created by a series of separations. Heaven from earth, light from darkness, water from land, etc. So when you have things that are together, right, there are things that have to be separated. They have to be distinguished. And we certainly have a division between human and animals and man from women. But what's the problem? The problem that we have today. Clear that we have today that actions that blur the boundaries, that uphold creation, that is a big problem. And that goes against the very foundation of why God created the world in the first place. Right? Threatens integrity, order, stability of creation. So therefore, what do you do? What do? You want to say there's no division. Right? There's no division. We're going to have, men on hormones, and they're going to, still sort of look like men, right? But they're really just like women, right? They're going to go into sports. They're going to break all the records. Of course they're going to break all the women's records because they're really men, right? So you're blurring the lines over here. You're really saying we're all the same, right? We're exactly all the same. We're not all the same, right? There's reason things are separated. There's reason men and women aren't built the same, right? They have different functions, totally different functions. But if you say, right, and I think this is a major point, right? If you say that they're really together and it's all one thing, that throws the foundation of creation totally into chaos, right? And that would be bad. Now, if we're going to say, well, we have to see it in the larger context, right? We have to see this verse in the larger context, but we don't have any indication of the reason why. So now I have another assumption. What's the assumption? That maybe there's the same conception of creation that produced a very orderly creation. Like, look at Genesis 1, very organized, very orderly, separating this from that. This is the other thing, right? Might be a little bit hard of an argument to make. Right, but on the other hand, we see there are certain things that were separated, right? 100%, certain things were separated, and why? So why over here? Why is there a difference? Why is there a difference? So some might say that forbidding a man to wear a woman's garb, so that there's no trace or shadow of a female attributed to him, right? Like we said, by weapons, they're manly, right? Gever means manly. Right? Is a woman manly? Not necessarily. Right? She's more feminine. There's no question. Right? So therefore, since they have different roles, they have different physical forms. Right? So why should we say they should be wearing the same things also? If you're going to separate in other ways, you should separate in this way as well.
If you don't mind, at some point before the show ends, would you discuss why women are not permitted to wear, or why the commandment was not given to women about wearing tzitzit? Okay, because it doesn't actually say the men in the verse in Deuteronomy 22:12. It just says you shall make these, for yourself and wear them. Right. So why are women told they're not? That didn't apply to them.
I know
the concept of women are not responsible for time.
I mean, the way it's versed in Hebrew is it's definitely for a man, not for a woman. That's a construct.
If you would you please explain that in detail?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'll get. Yeah. Let me see if I get there. Hopefully I'll get there.
Go over
So the whole
Rabbi.
point is to make a boundary.
Rabbi,
right? That's what we said. The whole point over here is to make a boundary. So therefore, women are not going to do the same thing as men. Men are not going to do the same thing as women. Now, before I get to the last thing you would ask before.
By the way, you can go over. The next show just canceled, so if you need some extra time, go for it.
Oh, look at that. You even give me extra time. So nice.
Okay.
It's never, ever happened. Oh, someone dropped dead. God forbid we give you more time. Oh, that's great.
Okay, take it
That's
away.
great. I'm sorry, gotta go. Yeah, there's an issue, right? There's an issue, when when we mentioned before. There's an issue with a woman. I had, these feminists say, if I wear unisex pants, there's no difference, right? There's no difference between men and women, right? So why can't I wear unisex pants? Why can't I wear pants that are specifically made for women, right? Now, if you look at pants made for women, are they really that much different? I mean, not that I've checked, but are they really significantly different than pants that are made for men? I think they're pretty much the same, right? So therefore, what's the issue? It's a modesty issue. What's the modesty issue? The modesty issue is the fact that you can see the split in between. And because you can see the split, you can see the split in between, so it's a modesty issue, right? It's 100% a modesty issue. It doesn't matter if it's made for women. Now, someone once asked me, there are certain pants, certain pants that are more, I don't know, almost like a skirt. I forget exactly what they're called. I don't remember what they're called offhand. But they're seemingly, it's something where you cannot see. You can't really tell the legs underneath. You can't see the split in between. It's not a skirt. It's not a kilt. I don't know exactly. I forget what it's called, specific term. Whatever it is, it's something where a woman's going to wear, you're going to say you can't see the difference. Right? You can't see the difference. Now, if that would be the case, and you cannot see the split in between the legs, maybe that's okay. Right? But what do I care? What do I care if the case is that it looks the same, it's similar enough, and I can see the split between the legs, and guess what? They're not wearing baggy pants, right? I guarantee most women aren't going to be wearing baggy pants, right? Maybe they're in style today, I don't know. But I see a lot of people, in my travels, I see these women wearing, ripped jeans, right? It's a fad. I don't know. People like to wear ripped jeans. Well, I don't think that's so modest either, right? Depends where they're ripped also. Right, but we're not going to go there. But what's the point? The point is they're wearing it, obviously showing off other parts of the body, right? So it's gonna take that, it's gonna take that form, and therefore would be, that would be, that would be forbidden, right? So here the whole issue is that we're going to separate men and women, and therefore anything that a woman does that's similar to a man, and vice versa. And vice versa is going to be, it's going to be forbidden. So we mentioned about a male plucking his eyebrows, in general, that would be the case. We'll get into a mirror too much, and all that, right? So now, so anything like that. What about wearing perfume? What about wearing aftershave, right? Let's say you got, cologne. Men want to wear cologne, right? They want to smell good. Right? So it's specifically made for men. Okay. So what if it's specifically made for men? Right? The fact it does the same thing, a woman's allowed to. Right? She's not allowed to wear too much, otherwise she's going to attract other men, etc. That would be forbidden. Not saying she can't wear it, but at the same time for a guy to wear, even if he doesn't wear that much. Now, many rabbinical authorities will say that's what women do. If that's what women do, it would be forbidden, even if it's made for men. So I remember I asked this question many years ago. I had half a bottle of Polo. Polo, I don't know if they still exist. They probably still do, right? Polo cologne. Nope. Uses lighter fluid, right? It was good. It was unbelievable flames. But, I couldn't use it for, that was the psak I got. Can't use it. That's what women do. So that was, that was forbidden. Right? So now, back to your $1 million question. What about women and tzitzis? Right? So now, let's go to the mitzvah of tzitzis. If you look at the book of Numbers, chapter 15, verse 37, God spoke to Moshe saying, speak to the children of Israel, it says, Bnei Yisrael, sons of Israel. Right? That's significant. Sons of Israel, not women of Israel. But okay, let's go further. It said that they make themselves fringes on the corners of their garments throughout the generations. And you put on the fringe, the corner of each thread of blue, which is techeles, and etc. You're going to wear it. You remember all God's commandments, verse 40, verse 39. not go after your heart, after your eyes, which both apply to men and women, right? So you remember to do all my commandments. Okay, there's one verse which you mentioned, Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 12. Twisted cords you shall make in the four corners of your covering, which you cover yourself. Right? That which you cover it. So you see the mitzvah to wear tzitzis is on a four-cornered garment. And ideally, person should wear techelis. Right? Techelis meaning that blue string. There are some people that wear it, and many hold we don't have a clear-cut tradition. If we don't have a clear-cut tradition, then we don't do it. But even if you don't lose the mitzvah, because because it's brought down that even if it doesn't nullify the mitzvah if I wear tzitzis and I put on the wrong color of blue, okay, I still get the mitzvah of tzitzis. I didn't nullify the mitzvah over here. So someone will say, so why not wear it? Why should I be allowed to wear it? It doesn't hurt. Even better, it could be the mitzvah of techelis of wearing this blue dye. Very good. But we don't have a clear-cut tradition. Right? So as my Rebbe said, I've heard others say it, we don't have a clear-cut tradition. It's not something we do. Now, the mitzvah to wear tzitzis on a four-corner garment, right, with techelis if we have techelis. What does the verse 39 in the book of Numbers say? That you will see it. Right? Remember, that's what it says. It says, it'll be for you a fringe that you will see it. Remember all God's commandments and do them. Then it says, don't go after your heart, after your eyes. Fine. But what's the point of seeing them? Seeing tzitzis reminds you of all of God's commandments. To keep you from your heart and your eyes from straying. Right? Now, comes along the Gemara. Anyone wants to look it up. Menachot 43b tells us, what does that mean? That you're going to see them remember all of God's commandments. This mitzvah is considered like all the commandments combined. Right? A pretty important mitzvah over here. Right? In other words, you're going to look at the tzitzis hopefully before you sin. You're going to look at the tzitzis, it's going to remind you of the commandments. You're not going to do it. You're not going to do this transgression. Right? So it's considered as weighty as all the mitzvahs together. Now, if that's so, and that's the ultimate purpose to perform the mitzvahs, right? Why am I doing it in general? Because that's going to make me holy. Okay, very good. Right? That's going to make me holy. Fine. There are other reasons as well, etc. So now, what's my obligation? My obligation is, if I have a four-corner garment, maybe like a shawl, a poncho, or something like that, right? Then I'd be obligated to put tzitzis. But it's not obligatory for anyone, right? But we obligate ourselves, right? We obligate ourselves. We wear four-corner garments, put tzitzis on them, right? Tzitzis already on them. We don't have to do it, per se. So therefore, we wear it every day. Not a problem, right? Definitely not a problem. Now, there's another issue, right? There's another issue. And that is that if we're since it's such a valued mitzvah, right, why do women don't do it? Right? Why don't women do it? So we have a medrash to the verse in Numbers, which goes into a whole discussion. It says God spoke to Moshe saying, we'll go through the medrash, to the children of Israel, right? Bnei Yisrael, the sons of Israel, literally, make them tzitzis, etc. Women should be included. Right? Comes along Reb Shimon. Why aren't women included? Because they're not included in mitzvahs that are bound by time. They're exempt from any positive time-bound commandment. So therefore, every positive time-bound commandment, that's only going to apply to who? Men. Because we have more time. Right? We have more obligations. So women are busier. Right? No question. With other things. So that applies to men, doesn't apply to women. Right? Comes along. There's another opinion that says it's only an exemption for women. Let's say, exempted a woman's veil from tzitzis. Right? They're only obligated on a shawl, let's say. Maybe the husband covers himself with it, whatever. But the point is that really, women should be included. Right? Question is, women are exempt in general by positive time-bound commandments. But you see, a woman can sit in a sukkah. Right? A woman, if you're Ashkenazi, can make a blessing over a lulav. Right? In an esrog. So you see that there are positive time-bound commandments. Women are obligated it. Right? Now, even according, to either, you can tell me, well, isn't it true? It says Bnei Yisrael. So some will say it says Bnei Yisrael, not Benosh Yisrael. The sons, not the daughters. Right? So maybe you tell me, that doesn't exclude women either. Why? Because when it says Bnei Yisrael, it could be including everybody. Right? Instead of saying the sons of Israel, it could be the children of Israel. Children of Israel means women. Right? So maybe it's all inclusive. Right? Who's to say it's exclusive? Could be it's all exclusive. Right? But then why mention, if that's true, why mention it's positive time-bound mitzvah? Right? Then why would you tell me it's positive time-bound mitzvah that only applies to men, not to women? Right? In other words, if you tell me it's all inclusive, and that's what the phrase means, then why tell me you're excluding over here? You shouldn't tell me that. Right? You shouldn't tell me that. So technically, right? Technically, you tell me, okay, maybe she'd be allowed to do it anyway. But we hold that it's time bound. As we understand, there are things that certain people are exempt by, right? Because it's something that is time bound, right? So if it's time bound, they're exempt. We don't wear tzitzis at night, technically, right? Because you're only supposed to see it. So if you're supposed to see it, we wear it during the day, right? But many people wear it at night, as well. There were people that hold that some, they say in the name of Amram, Gon used to, even though women are exempt from tzitzis, he attached tzitzis to his wife's garment only as a midas chasidus, not as an obligation, but as, a nice thing to do, as a pious act. Right? The question is, maybe he's going to wear the apron. Maybe that's going to be a problem. Right? But maybe it was just, it was a voluntary type of thing. Right? So what's the bottom line over here? Technically, if they wanted to, women should be allowed to, right? The prevailing custom is it's not, and one of the reasons is because we hold today that it's going to be considered a male garment. So now, if we said before that a woman can't wear a male garment, right? And this is really considered a male garment, right? Then that would be a problem, right? That would be a problem over here. So the question is, even if it's not something she's obligated, let's say it's a mitzvah bound by time. Even if it's a mitzvah bound by time, maybe she wants to obligate herself. Maybe she wants to do it. But what's the problem? The problem is, we learned from over here, it's considered a male garment. If it's a male garment, how could you do that? How could you take on something if you're going to run into other problems? Right? So what's the reason? According to some, again, it's positive and time bound, meaning that it applies specifically to a man's garment, not a woman. Because if it's something that's time bound, let's go back to the beginning. We said at the beginning that by anything that's time bound, right? Who is that going to apply to? It's going to apply to a man. It's going to come to exclude a woman. So now, even if you want to tell me, right, that mentions a woman, why am I going to go through the whole thing and have a woman do it if it's going to bring in other issues, right? So the bottom line today is that most rabbinical authorities hold that even if a woman wanted to do it, you'd have to take it out of the category of a male garment, right? Because you have this problem of cross-dressing, and that's going to stop her altogether, right? Many halachic authorities agree, that today there's nothing to talk about, that this garment, is a male garment. Forget about time-bound or not. Today you got the prohibition of Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 5. That you have the problem, right? Now, even if a woman wants to take it on, how do you get out of this problem, right? You don't get out of this problem, right? You certainly don't get out of this problem. Even if she voluntarily wants to, even if she wants to wear it. So others may say, well, maybe it's not a problem, right? Maybe she wants to do it, it's fine. But the vast majority of rabbinical authorities today, are going to say it's a problem of cross-dressing, and that's why, that's why it's forbidden. That's what I would say. That's what I would say on that. But the one other thing I forgot to mention, is that if the whole purpose is to see them and remember all the mitzvahs, women don't have all the mitzvahs.
Right.
They don't have the same obligations. Women, there are many things women are exempt from. Learning Torah is one of them, right? Certainly one of them. They have to learn. There are certain mitzvahs they certainly have to learn. There's no question. And Shabbos and the holidays and Lashon Hara and Kashrus, plenty of things they have to learn, right? That there's no question, right? But at the end of the day, their obligation, when they look at tzitzis, they're going to say, oh, I'm looking at all the commandments. But you don't have all the commandments. Because the gematria of tzitzis is 611, right? I think 613, right? Mine is of all the commandments, right? All the commandments, right? So a woman doesn't have all the commandments. Now, if she doesn't have all the commandments, it's a little bit funny if you look at it, right? If you look at it, you're going to say, well, even though I'm exempt from commandments, doesn't mean I can't keep commandments, right? We're not saying that, right? We're saying the fact that if she's not included in all the commandments, because a lot of things don't apply to her, then why would this apply as well?
So
right?
why would it apply to men, though? Because
I guess that would be the simple, long explanation.
Well, the thing
that.
is, though, not all the commandments apply to men either. So how is that a determining factor?
Many do. What do you mean? I mean, listen, there are things that maybe don't apply. Let's say a man doesn't get divorced, right? Or a man's not a Kohen, right? Or, he can't do certain things and serve in the temple and doesn't live in Israel. You're right. But if he would, it would apply. Women, that doesn't apply to them.
But what about the
women
laws
live in Israel, they have to, if they eat fruits and vegetables, they have to be tithed, right? They're obligated in that. That's true. But they have many, many fewer mitzvahs.
Right. But the point is, not all the 613 laws apply to men either. I mean, you got laws regarding the ger, got laws regarding,
you're right,
like nidah, for example, which are strictly
100%,
for women, right?
100%. But the whole, 100%. But the idea is going to be is that the vast majority of mitzvahs apply more to men than to women.
Yeah, vast majority,
right?
Right.
If you're going to tell me, for instance, that it's compared to all the mitzvahs in the Torah. This one mitzvah is compared to all the mitzvahs. We know there are many things women are exempt from. Many things that they're exempt from. Right? So I can say just by deduction, it would definitely, forget about whether it's a male garment or not. It would apply to men, not to women. Right? Much more. So
why
in theory, there are some rabbinical authorities that may hold that if you do it in a way where it's, somehow you get out of the problem of male garment, or even if you don't necessarily hold it's an issue of a male garment, and they do it for the sake of heaven, some may say it's okay.
Right.
Some may say it's okay, but that's certainly not, that's certainly not the norm, right? And some may only permit this idea of wearing a male garment if it's a non-decorative purpose of wearing the garment. Let's say it's functional. I can wear it, in a functional way, not in a ritualistic way, right? Maybe that might be okay, right? But the problem is, most women today who want to wear tzitzis, they want to be like men. They're equating it to emulate men. That's the problem. If it would be done for the sake of heaven, that'd be another issue. I'll tell you one quick story. That, I knew somebody, that this woman wanted to wear tzitzis and gave me all these different proofs why and different things. Finally, I said, it's not accepted in the community. We don't do it. Male garment, different things. So yeah, but what about this? What about that? And I said, listen, you have 2 kids. You have 2 sons you want to marry off. If you tell people you do this, you'll never marry them off. They're going to think you're strange. They're going to think you're a wacko. If you want to do that, fine, right? But make sure no one ever finds out about it if you do it. I didn't say it was permissible, right? But the problem is today, there's no question. Most women who want to do this, it's not for the sake of heaven. They want to resemble men. So even if you got around all these problems, you want to tell me 100% because for the sake of heaven, I haven't met any woman today that's like that. It's they want to be like men. And And the problem with all this, as we said before, is that the boundaries get skewed. And once the boundaries get skewed, that's why a potential reason why the Torah can say it's an abomination, because look what it leads to. Look what the potential it can lead to. We see it. We see it on a regular basis. It's it's the way of the world today. It's crazy. But that's what's going on in the world today, right? So therefore, it makes sense why you don't want to cross those boundaries, and you give me mixed messages, tremendous mixed messages. Kids today don't know which way to turn. I should be like myself. I should be a guy. I should be a woman. Should I be, maybe I should be both. Where does it end? It doesn't end, and it causes chaos. And that's that's what's going on today. So you gave me an extra 9 minutes. That was nice. That was so nice of you. I love this show.
That's funny. Good deal. Well, thanks for taking the time to explain it, and thank you all for tuning in. The next show has been canceled. Rabbi Shulman is not feeling well, so throw a prayer his way. He should have a refuah shlema. And then the following show is going to be coming up at 2:30. You don't want to miss it. It's the new series with Dave on Mays. So you guys have a great week. And Rabbi Shavua Tov, we'll talk to you soon, and y'all have a good one. Peace out, everybody.
תמיד כולם ביחד, חשוב מכל חשוב והכרחי